But if one of the staff takes early retirement now or leaves during the health, we have no policy in place and we are exposed fully to everything because we have nothing in place to protect us. This policy needed to be in place in April.
It wasn't presented to the council till July. So
there was a interim one brought in.
Can we move on, Chair?
In June. You keep saying move on, but if we don't get it sorted out, so if
next month we're going to discuss it.
so if these ladies take their retirement tomorrow,
are you taking away retirement tomorrow?
we don't know.
Right, let's go.
There is a sense of urgency we need to do it, and I know Gersh is working on it. What little I do know is that the delta between the advice Gersh has got and what we were presented was narrow. The problem was, and this council debated this and absolutely didn't like it, was the size of there were too many unknowns. Now, if they're difficult questions to answer, I don't care. I'll give them time to answer them. But we're going to go into this with our eyes open.
Thank you.
Right. S106 contributions. To consider S106 contributions securing in 3 categories of open spaces.
She sent me the amount of 106 money that's outstanding for Arlesey, and it amounts to 19,436.53. As you will see, it's in 3 different categories where we can spend this money, and she has approved my figures today.
Elsie, could I just ask whether you've taken any money in the last 2 months? Because the numbers that I received from Councillor Young, I agree with the outdoor sport and the informal open space facility. The amount that I had recorded under recreational open space for children was actually 15,852.78.
There may have been some added.
Well, 14,486.76.
Please
more
confirm these
these
today.
numbers. So.
Yeah, she confirmed these today. What she did say was that the 486.76 the S106 money secured for play in Arlesey for improvements at Chapel Drive and Howden Green have been. She's had a colleague apply for that money. She is aware that the Town Council wants to use the money, and it's what decision you make this evening as to how you want to use that amount for the children's play area.
We just closed the play area, so we didn't.
It's only that I think that there should be £1,400 more there. Unless you spent £1,400 in the last 8 weeks since I last saw
This is the last report I had, which was printed on the 9th of September.
We probably need to query that. I need to query that with Councillor Young, because his numbers, which he also got from officers, show that you've got more.
Yeah. She did state that actual figure today in an email to me to say that one of her colleagues who looks after CBC play areas was applying for that amount as well.
So how does this work? How long will it take us to get hold of this money? Or is it in our account?
This money's already sat in CBC bank account, so subject to meeting the criteria in
sent to a committee.
And to say where you're going to spend the money and obviously show what piece of equipment or equipment
What you use it for.
Don't forget, we've also asked what YAP, the Youth Council, to look at doing something like a sensory garden and disabled play. But that's delaying the spend a bit. But if somebody at CBC has got their eye on this money, right, to spend.
Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah, we're hearing quite clearly that somebody at somebody at CBC has got their eye on spending this money, so we're going to get in quick to make sure that we can spend the money before they do.
Well, we need to upgrade our play area over there.
Yes, let's have a nice, splendid, absolutely modern, all singing and dancing play area for our children out there, which also is available to children with disabilities.
Yeah, right, okay. Can we put working parties together to price the play area?
And meet when?
All right, would you like me to price a play area and give a proposal to the environment, would you say?
Yeah.
You do have other areas to spend money as well. Outdoor sport
Oh, right, okay.
and obviously open space facilities.
Oh,
And I also had a note of £4,702 for indoor sport as well.
indoor sport.
Oh, also.
You can find somewhere to
Basket
spend
was
that.
at the Oakies.
You said indoor sports, so if the indoor bowls that use this facility here wanted some new equipment, they can apply to you for.
If the town council supported the application, yes. It's up to the town council.
I can tell you now that there'll be an application put in, and I can assure you that it will be put next time. I don't play the indoor bowls, but I know somebody who does.
What, would it fit in here?
They play indoor bowls in here now. They store a mat in the bar and everything.
Okay. All right, I'll take an action and come back with some ideas what we spend this money on. What's the definition of outdoor sport? How loose is it like?
Generally, it's quite loose.
Ah, cool, good. I'll see if I can use that. And informal open space, I haven't got a clue what that is.
Landscape.
Oh, yes, yes.
Not the
Yeah, or
This could be
outside
a
of
sensory
our-
garden, right?
It can.
And new allotments where we're clearing.
Yes.
Ah.
Yeah, you get paid out 2,800 pounds.
That 2.8 could be where the clearance, the 2.6 we need to clear it from.
Tomorrow on that.
So is it coming from that? Do we need to apply to take it from reserves?
No, we don't. If we can take it from here, we can apply for 106 money to do that.
Apply for it and get it approved, then you don't need to take it from reserves.
So we take it from
But it will,
reserves.
it will depend on how the section 106 agreement for that particular amount of money is written. So there may be some specific clauses. Sometimes money for recreational open space would be tied to a particular play area, for example.
Right.
So the clerk will ask at least a right if there's any restriction. I don't usually, I think for informal open space, I don't think they should be just in the parish.
So they're a lot looser than they used to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
that'd be
it's
great. Clear the
So
land.
we're interested in using the children's amount and also the open space amount. Yeah.
So it looks like we've got about 17, 18k.
And what were you saying about other areas? Were they ones that were Arlesey or CBC?
CBC, they can apply for it as well.
You mentioned two specific
Yeah, Happy Green and Chapel Drive.
So would that would
The
be,
officer has already applied to use that money in those areas.
yeah, so providing we get them before them.
Well, we're not in before them, the application's
Already
been in.
there. Is that right?
I think that you should probably change that. I don't think that should take priority. Usually my understanding, this money is explicitly for the local town parish council to decide how it's used, not for CBC to use it. Unless the section 106 agreement is specific to the upper tier authority rather than the town council. But my understanding that all this money that was looked at, not just for Arlesey but across other towns and parishes in central Bedfordshire, is specifically for towns and parish councils.
wants me to let her know, then she can address.
Specifically for us, can't work out why he's even looking at it. I'm not being funny, but it's for us to invest in this community, right? And it's for us to improve this community.
When you say officer, is that an employee? or something?
Yeah.
Do we know what they've asked for? We might happen to agree.
Don't know about it.
Well, she's asked for the release of the total of 14,000.
Oh, right, okay. Fine.
But it'd be worth finding what it's for, what you intend to use it for.
Yes, we might agree with it.
Because,
Well, I can only vouch for how we green stuff, that's all, 8 years old. I believe you.
they can't just, I wouldn't have thought they could have just applied for it without informing.
But some of the stuff around there is 19 years old. It's actually got a date on it.
Down here.
Yeah. Some of the stuff actually says this equipment was present to the town council
Okay.
by the Recreation Association of Arlesey in 1995. It's got a plaque across the top. It's 19 years old.
Right,
Right. Item 19. Okay. The correspondence we received from the village hall, so from the church to have the village hall, they're considering making a reduction in the charge for the event. I'd like to propose that we actually waive the charge, like we always do, because they don't charge us the church for civic service. So, and also waive the deposit. Oh, sorry, the deposit has already been paid, so it's not waived deposit. We'll get it back in or something.
Good for them.
It's a very nice event to get along to. They do really lovely food with it. The only thing is the quiz is very difficult.
That's Jim Randall for you.
Yeah.
You need to be an egghead.
Usually come last.
Right. Arlesey Cross stakeholders meeting to receive a report from the stakeholders meeting in the village hall on the 23rd of September.
Oh, exactly right. Well, we have the chairman here if you want to.
Well, I think that it should really fall to town council representatives to make a report on behalf of the town council. I would hate to feel that I might give a biased interpretation of my chair.
You might not like the biased interpretation, I do.
Perhaps we should have both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy to report. So it was the first meeting of what's effectively the liaison group, so it was disseminating information. It was well attended, I thought. There was a good cross section of stakeholders, as expected. It was agreed to meet quarterly, every 3 months.
It was agreed that we'll meet quarterly unless it needed to meet more frequently.
Right.
But at the moment it was, obviously it's in the early stages, so we'll plan the next meeting, I think, for January the date up.
Yes.
Early January.
I came away with a distinct impression that there were more questions than answers. Lots of unknowns. So a couple of things I asked have been taken away. And I was unsure as to quite how I would get answers to that, but then surely wouldn't come out. Those questions aren't going to be left to the next meeting, are they?
No, notes from the meeting will be circulated, I think we said 3 weeks after the meeting,
Right.
to all the participants. It's, as we discussed, for the benefit of the public, this stakeholder meeting is not a decision-making body, it's to provide communication between all the different groups involved. So that's the Town Council, CBC, the landowners, the Voice of Arlesey and the Arlesey Residents Association. And so notes will be circulated within the next couple of weeks, I think, Councillor Holloway, which will hopefully answer some issues, but as you say, there's many more open issues than there are closed ones at the moment, particularly associated with timing, with ownership issues, particularly on the west side, and how the whole development will be phased. And as yet, we've got no planning applications formally made for either development yet.
So I was curious as to what plan B there might be if the second road doesn't actually connect with the Fireways Junction, even though I know we've discussed it. And there wasn't really an answer to that, was it? Ultimately, the central beds can compulsorily purchase that.
That was the answer that was given.
Hmm.
That in the final case, and that road couldn't be delivered any other way, then CBC have the right to enforce.
But that begs the question, what do we do till then? Because that will take years. Years.
Isn't that only still can be called a trunk road because it can't be, it's an estate road? And the way that it's showing on the plan, somebody could challenge it being a trunk road because it's coming out in the village, it's generating all that problem south end of the village, and there's been no rectification and all that traffic going down Hitchin Road because it's like, so saying all the traffic's going to go out via the A507. Yes, if you've got sat nav, your sat nav you would now take up via the A507. But if somebody's going along with a compulsory purchase order, a landowner has that right to take it to appeal, and the appeal will go to court. Okay, so lo and behold, at the end of the day, right, it's only being pushed through because it's a trunk road. It isn't a trunk road, it's an estate road. And the other way around is he puts in a planning application and he proves that he started it, right, and that's it. He doesn't have to finish it. There's no finishing time on a planning application. There's a start time. As long as you've started it within the 3-year period, right, you can then sit with the curbstone blade in there and dug out indefinitely. And as far as he's concerned, he started the work.
Well, I mean, there's many different ways that could be interpreted, but as my understanding, the planning inspector, when that site was incorporated in the LDF, made it clear that the road had to be delivered for the site to be sustainable, and therefore it would be very unlikely that planning permission could be granted for any development unless the road was delivered at the same time.
But how much of the road, not just minor, just piecemeal?
Unless the road on the west side could be delivered in its entirety, then the development on the west side couldn't proceed. Because it's an integral part of the development, which is why officers, and it's been talked about before, might have to consider compulsory purchase if agreement can't be reached.
So far with there, it's took place in piecemeal. We had the bit on the Five Ways junction, then we had the bit off St John's Road, a bit further around Cricketers Road, and so what we're getting is we're getting different developers doing little tiny bits, okay, instead of doing the whole thing in one go. What we keep saying about not doing piecemeal, but then it keeps coming back. We end up getting it piecemeal all the time.
And we probably shouldn't turn this into going over old ground again and again. The point of having the master plan is to bring all those issues together and highlight the fact that certain things have to be delivered in their entirety for any of it to be delivered. And that's the stage we're at the moment. We have to now proceed with the process. Over the next few months, so we can see how those ownership issues and planning applications come together. But I mean, it seems pretty clear in officers' minds that the road in its entirety is an integral part of the planning application proceeding.
When your colleagues
I think, Nick, I think that statement was made at the stakeholders.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of. I mean, there are still too many unknowns.
One of your colleagues came in a while ago to us saying that the relief road will be put in as the development goes through, right? But that means that all the heavy traffic.
But it's a very fluid situation, David. It's changing all the time. So what people say in good faith 3 months ago might not be quite
But you
right
see,
now.
this town council said, right, when they last time they took a decision on it, unless of course they could guarantee coming off the A507 and taking the relief road through first, this town council would continually oppose it because we didn't want the heavy traffic coming through the middle of the village. It was quite clear and quite precise when we told the resident people went there.
And what you've heard, and I'm not a fan of this project, don't get me wrong, what you've heard is consistent with that demand. We're not, unless the officers are proceeding with a view to building the whole road in its entirety. The problem that I can imagine coming over the horizon is if we go to this, if it's all contested and it goes to compulsory purchase, that's years. And what's that going to do for the whole project? What I'd like to know is, look, the east side, would that still go ahead in regardless of what happens on the west side?
Well, I think that's an open issue at the moment. I mean, as ward councillors, we've been pushing all the
Can
time.
someone turn their phone off? please?
I did turn it off and it came back on. I do apologise.
Particularly during the discussions of the master plan in executive, we made it very clear that we were pushing for that road to be built in its entirety, because we recognise the importance to residents as a key part of the delivery of the project, and we're continuing to do that. And that was a message that we again talked about at the stakeholder meeting, which isn't a decision for the road. That's to do with planning applications and the landowners and such like. And we will all need to address that at the time that particular planning applications come forward in the next 6 months, a year, 18 months. Could the east side go ahead without the west side? Well, it could only, as far as the master plan is concerned, go ahead if the traffic issues were investigated and found to be sustainable. Whether that means that you would have to have restricted access, so traffic couldn't all come to the high street, or whether the project as such is unsustainable, and that has to be looked at in the context of planning applications.
So the worry is lack of faith and trust in the officers. And one of the things that I think it was the guy from traffic said, that he was going to share with us how they do their measurements and how they analyse the data. So that rather than just saying there isn't going to be a problem or that road is sufficient, which I think everyone couldn't believe, he's going to say why they think that. So you'll see a little bit more about how they're.
Yeah, if you recall, I asked that all the traffic data that was presented to the various stakeholder groups at the time of the master plan discussions was recirculated to everyone.
But it was also going to tell us the outcomes.
It wasn't clear that some groups had received it. They'd been the presentation, but not actually received the data. So it's important that that's made available again. And then secondly, I think whether at the next stakeholder group or a separate meeting, that those figures should be discussed again. It is a concern still. I was one of the people that expressed during the master plan discussions support for the view that more work needs to be done on the southern exit from Arlesey because of the traffic figures, and I still believe that's the case.
Well, they did say that, so I asked, they did say that they've done the analysis now.
Well, they did do analysis at the time of the master plan, and it was presented in a forum which did include the Town Council, Voice of Arlesey and Residents Association. What I'm not clear about was that the data presented in the meeting was then subsequently circulated to everybody, and that's what I asked would happen at the meeting we had 2 weeks ago.
While it's on the drawing board stage, can it not be addressed, this problem about the traffic all going down Hitchin Road? Because once it becomes off the drawing board, then we then talk about even more housing being built, okay, more green space being taken away to rectify a problem that we know is there in existence now. And surely someone could sit down and try and say, this has been a problem that's been raised. I know it means going back and saying the LDF would need to be changed because certain land was dropped out of development, but it means to say that some of that land would have to come into a second road parallel to Hitchin Road to take it off through there and cutting across West Drive, rather than the loop going round and dropping all the traffic down at the south end of Arlesey, which is actually going to be a nightmare. I know the sat-navs turn around and say A507, even now, Stratford Church End, but really and truly, why it's still on the drawing before someone's actually drawn the total finished plan, could we not just say this is what needs to happen to try and rectify it?
A traffic assessment has been done, and that's the information that I've insisted that we recirculate to everybody so that we can have a further discussion and another opportunity to look at the impact, not just in the southern road, which I know we're all concerned about, but across the whole plan. And that applies just as much to, for example, the traffic flow on the road going out to the 507, for example.
What happens if we don't agree with the traffic assessment?
Well, actually, I don't think we did agree with the traffic assessment.
I don't know. Is
I
there
seem to
scope? I mean, is it
remember
something
we
we can appeal against, or do they just say no, this is how it's going to be?
Well,
I know the facts is how we got around to it.
the next time that the assessment could be formally challenged would be at the time of the planning application, because a key part of the planning application is whether the transport plan is sustainable. And obviously that's a bit of a weasel word, we all know that. In terms of challenged, then it would have to be challenged from the basis of the sort of fundamental data that's used to draw up the assessment.
Oh, right, so if we get copies of that data, if we doubt it,
Yes,
that's your own analysis.
I mean, it refers to in the data that's used for these things, various standard databases that are used throughout the country for determining traffic flow, different roads and different densities of development. It takes the data from the local census for car ownership in Arlesey as well, is fed into that as well.
Okay, I'm really nervous about modelling any of this. I'd rather we can just stick some sensors and come up with absolute values.
Well, the issue, I mean, the absolute values are taken from traffic counts. I think the question is how you decide on the incremental impact of the development.
Oh, I
That's
see.
where you get in
When it's in place.
and
Right.
what you use, what data you use to extrapolate from where you are now to where you will be in 2020 or 2025, which has got various components. It's got where you're starting from now. It's got traffic growth that will occur just because of organic growth in the community. People get richer, they buy more cars, they travel more.
No choice but to
And then
model.
you've got incremental traffic growth from further development in the area, whether it be from this particular Arlesey Cross development or from other developments that are going across the area as well. So it becomes quite a complex model. So that's, I think, the sort of things that we want to discuss once the data has been recirculated. At least that was my understanding from the meeting.
I think it's those models that are used in the share rates, how we model the future.
Yes. But that data's available. You can look at the various databases. I think they mention Island Master Plan and some of the accompanying documentation.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Walden telecommunications limited correspondence has been received. There's reference to the telephone mast at Ickleford Nash, Arlesey Road, Arlesey, which, for those who don't know, I believe is next door to the Brooker's Yard as you take Bend, going between Arlesey and Ickleford. There is a telephone mast there. Councillors had it sent out with their pack, which is an existing upgrade. Not great. Right. Commemoration of the 1914. Any comments on that one? On telecommunications?
There'll be a bigger, more pollution in the airways, is that?
It's going to be better.
It's an upgrade to 4G, and I think the area was actually slightly lower.
No.
You don't need a heat in your car when you drive past it.
Think positive, Linda. Positive.
Frost on that bend.
You'll get a microwave and chicken on the way home. Sorry. No comment. The commemoration of 1914 to 2014 to receive the WW1 project report from Councillor Holloway.
Yeah, I've got a report here from ex-councillor Wang on progress. I'll just read it out if I may. It's designed to be read out. Yeah. The highlights in September's council meeting has been the placing of 3 crosses at the Menin Gate on the 8th of September. Excuse me, the crosses were placed as part of the night of last post ceremony. Also in attendance was the Army Commander-in-Chief and an office group in training. Their presence added to the ceremony with a military band playing the national anthems of France and the United Kingdom. And a total of 17 people from the village attended the ceremony. And I've heard since that was a fabulous trip. The two men we had in Turkey have been remembered and crosses placed. And Jodie is making excellent progress with her film. Plans well in hand for screening on the 22nd of November. So you need to get in touch with Jodie. There's a finite capacity in the hall to watch that film. And there's going to be 2 showings, by the way. The project has been asked to attend a National Remembrance launch event in London on the 20th of November, where Eric Pickles is expected to be in attendance. 2 crosses have yet to be placed.